The AWARE Project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you that people who use psychedelics mindfully across all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
So yes, today we have a special guest, Mateo Pallamary, and he's been studying plant shamanism for about 30 years, and he's going to be doing a talk titled Mestizo and Ayahuasca Shamanism in the Peruvian Amazon. And I'll just read his bio real quick so you can get a sense of him. So Matt goes by Mateo as well. Pallamary is an award-winning writer, musician, and sound healer who has been studying shamanism all of his life and incorporates shamanic practices into his daily life as well as into his writing and teaching. His historical novel of first contact between shamans and Jesuits. Thank you.
Go on talking.
In 18th century South America, titled Land Without Evil, received rave reviews along with a San Diego Book Award. It was also adapted into a stage show, the making of which was the subject of a PBS series that garnered an Emmy nomination. Matt has spent 30 years studying ayahuasca, its rituals and traditions, and its helper plants, and has done extended shamanic plant dietas in the Peruvian Amazon for the last 20 years. He has also studied and worked with numerous other visionary and healing plants found worldwide. His memoir, Spirit Matters, detailing his journeys to Peru, working with shamanic plant medicines, took first place in the San Diego Book Awards Spiritual Book category and was an award-winning finalist in the autobiography/memoir category of the National Best Book Award. Spirit Matters is also available as an audiobook. His book on writing fantastic fiction, A Shamanic Approach to Story, took first place in the International Book Awards Writing and Editing category, and his popular fantastic fiction workshop has been a staple of the Santa Barbara Writers Conference and the Southern California Writers Conference for over 25 years. Aside from lecturing at numerous venues throughout the United States and appearing on numerous radio shows, podcasts, and television shows, Matt has spent extended time in the jungles, mountains, and deserts of North, Central, and South America, pursuing his studies of shamanism, and ancient cultures. So, I present to you, Mateo Pallamary.
Thank you. I get tired of hearing my bio. Long story. First off, I really appreciate everybody coming. I'm glad a few more filled in. I got eclipsed by the eclipse, but that's nothing new to me. Some years ago, I was at a science fiction convention speaking, and they scheduled me opposite of Buzz Aldrin. So not only did I not get to see Buzz, but I had to basically sit by myself and twiddle my thumbs. So it's just the way the universe works. But we are being broadcast on Facebook, and thank you everybody out there for checking in, especially my East Coast homies. So this talk is a run-up. I'm going to be doing a month-long tour in Florida next month, and it's part of an exhibit. Has anybody heard of Pablo Amaringo? Famous, top-notch ayahuasca painter. So it's going to be an exhibit of 95 of his paintings. I'm going to be lecturing on shamanism, very similar to this. And then I'm going to be performing with Tito La Rosa, who's an Emmy-winning pre-Columbian instrument specialist from Peru. And these guys I've been singing and playing with in the jungle for all these years, and coming up also. So I'm going to get to play and sing. I'm a drummer and a vocalist. And in sessions I sing the igaros and all that. I am curious, how many people have done ayahuasca? Okay, good. How many of you, if any, I know, I'm pretty sure you have, Caitlin, been to the jungle or someplace of that nature? Okay, oh, I like this. Okay, you guys are all hardcore, my peeps. So I'm going to go through the slideshow a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about how I got into all of this, and then I'll have time afterwards for some questions and answers. And as a little aside, I have a long history of altered state experience. Goes back many years, maybe 72. I started off hyperventilating, and then I was sniffing glue, and then weed came along, but then of course an LSD came along, that was it, I was hooked. But I have a lot of experience, and I did a lot of experimental things over the years. But throughout all of it, ayahuasca has been the top for me, the best plant teacher, just top for, I think, all the right reasons. So, a little bit about shamanism. Shamans were the first storytellers. They were the first healers, performing artists, bards, doctors, psychologists, all of those things. And when I speak to more conservative type groups, I like to throw them off in the beginning and tell them, thank you for inviting me to come here and speak about the world's oldest profession. And I always let that hang for a little bit until they get squirmy, and then I go, yeah, I know where your minds are going. And then I got them hooked. I didn't feel like I had to do that here because you guys are already kind of on board. But I'll get into a few little basics too, because there's a kind of a mixture of people here. But ayahuasca, the brew is called ayahuasca, but it's a mixture of two plants. One is the ayahuasca vine, which is Banisteriopsis caapi, and the other one is chacruna, they call it in Peru, which is Psychotria viridis, which is more of a bush. And it's a mixture of the two plants, and I'm going to show you here in just a minute with some slides on how it goes together and makes the equivalent of crankcase oil with battery acid in it. Is probably a good reference to it. But I want to say just a little bit. So I've always been fascinated with altered states. I've always been fascinated with shamanism. So I was doing some research in the UCSD library some years ago. I wrote this novel, I Had the Predators, about a guy who learns how to get into the bodies of animals. And I got fascinated with lycanthropy, which is the werewolf mythology. And lycanthropy goes back to shapeshifting. And I realized that shapeshifting in visionary plants in South America were like, woo. Shapeshifting is a worldwide phenomenon, but especially done in South America. So I started researching, and back in the olden days, I used to log on to the UCSD computer with my dial-up, and I'd print out pages and pages of stuff. And then I'd take the printouts and I'd go to the library and I'd spend $30 on a copy card and I'd copy everything. So I learned a lot about the plants. Well, soon after that I was walking through Pacific Beach here and I saw a head shop and I went, oh, that's interesting. I haven't been in a head shop for years. So I walked in, and to my surprise, there was High Times magazine. And I'm like, wow, I haven't seen that thing since the 70s. That's still around? And I picked it up, and I flipped it open, and right there, right where I flipped it, right where I looked, was an ad for ethnobotany seminars. And all the people that I had been researching on my own individually at the UCSD library were presenting. So I really didn't have any money, but I really didn't give a shit because I got out my credit card and I went, oh, I'm there. So I went to the first one in San Francisco in '96. If anybody knows anybody, Sasha Shilgin was there, and Terence McKenna, and Christian Reich, and all these people. And I found out that they were going to ethnobotany seminars in Mexico. They were originally the Palenque ethnobotany seminars, and the first one I went to was Uxmal in '98. And that's where I met Terence McKenna, and Jonathan Ott, and Christian Reich, and all these guys, Sasha Shilgin, Anna and Sasha Shilgin, and I found Tribe. So through that and through the research I was doing, I found out someone who was going into the jungle and doing ayahuasca and doing the dietas. And I was so adamant that I wanted to do it that they kept blowing me off for a while. And then they figured out I wasn't going to go away. And they figured out I was serious about what I was doing. And it wasn't about, gee, I'm going to go to the jungle, or people would say to me, gee, you're brave, you're going to go to the jungle. It was none of that. I had to go, period. So as a result of that, And part of that, this is a historical novel, Land Without Evil. And I got the story, it's from an honors course in anthropology that I took. And it talked about all this stuff that I was fascinated with. So this is the first contact with the Jesuits in the rainforest, but it's told from the Indians' point of view. It's really deep into shamanism. And so it got tied in with this one. I purposely wrote this was published in '99, and I wrote it, it's visionary experience to a high degree, but there are no plants and no substances. So I got high schoolers to read it, and I got it into a few schools. So I was like kind of deviant undercover even back then, you know. Now I'm getting more out about it. And then after all that, she mentioned Spirit Matters, which this is my memoir. I figured out that my life wasn't quite normal. I mean, whose life is, but this ends in the jungle with my first ayahuasca dieta. But I do want to get into some nitty gritty here of where I've been. I spent a lot of time with the Shipibo Indians. If anybody heard of Michael Harner's book, The Way of the Shaman, he was one of the first Westerners to contact the Shipibo. They're the Shipibo Kanibo, but now they're really going by Shipibo because things are getting mixed up, sometimes in not so good ways. But the Shipibos are more or less sort of one of the primary known keepers of ayahuasca traditions. But there's tons of them down there. So I want to touch on a few. I've worked in 4 different traditions, but one of the things I've discovered is the tradition that I've been working in the longest is actually the most pure. And it's Mestizo guys. But I spent some time with one of their mentors some years ago, and I'll never forget as long as I live, he said to me, I am a plant man. My father was a plant man, his father was a plant man before him, and his father was a plant man. I mean, he started reciting this generation, they were all plant men. So it didn't matter if he was Spanish or Mexican or part Chinese or black or all the different races that have been getting integrated into Peru, he carried that tradition, and it's been the most pure tradition. So I thought I would show a little bit of the 2 traditions and touch on some other things. And then move a little ahead. So you go ahead with the first one. Thank you, Caitlin. Oh! How did that get up there? Oh my God. I just want to say, shamanism is about transformation. This book has to do with writing and transformation. And it's a phoenix, and I confess that's an American Indian who's dancing in front of it. But I wanted to get the essence of transformation, because it's the essence of what story is. And has anybody heard of the hero's journey? Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces? Okay. The real roots of the hero's journey comes from the shaman's journey to the underworld. In a very concise way, they travel to the underworld. In South America, they get swallowed by the jaguar. In other cultures, they get dismembered. They get their bones replaced with quartz and other things. Down there, they call it being swallowed by the jaguar. And in essence, what it is being swallowed up by your shadow. Because in the end, it's shadow work. And shadow work is the most terrifying of all, because it's all the stuff that we don't want to see. Anyway, okay, yes. So I mentioned this earlier, they were the first medical specialists in indigenous communities, and their traditional methods are known to be effective in treating both physical and psychological ailments. The chemical components of plants that shamans use in healing rites could conceivably be building blocks for new drugs or cures for such scourges as cancer or AIDS. For thousands of years, indigenous groups have made extensive use of the materials contained in the rainforest to meet their health needs. The World Health Organization estimates that 80% of the people in developing countries still rely on traditional medicine for their primary healthcare needs. Without money, access, or faith in modern facilities, indigenous people depend on shamans, herbal healers, and rainforest plants for their survival. Shamans also play a crucial role in helping scientists to discover the potentials of plants. As one scientist has said, every time a medicine man dies, it is as if a library has burned down. I just want to add a couple of things. We're all seeing now how much finally cannabis is getting out there, and all the CBD stuff and the precise things that they're doing, finally getting out there. And I think that this, and part of this medicine is kind of part of that revolution and transition and change. So one of the things that's really important is that you can work with different plants in the jungle, but if you're not working with them in context, it's not going to have the same effect. Like when you do the plant dieta, you're in a tropical environment, you're sweating your ass off, you're eating in a particular way, you're taking in particular plants in a particular way, and so you can get amazing results in that context. But a lot of pharmaceutical corporations go down, they're trying to isolate like one component, and it's not that. It's all of it together. And then there's also a shamanic view where we are integrated in nature. And that's what happens when you get down there. You become the jungle. And I got little stories about that, but we'll see how much time we have for that. But let's move on. So this is a Shipibo shaman, David. I worked with him a lot, and then I found out over time that he was not a person of integrity, particularly with the women. So he's dressed, he's got the headdress, he's got the kushma. You can see the designs there are all over the Shipibo pattern work. They're representative of songs and energy. But I worked with him for a while, and then I found out what he was doing, and I'm not going to get into the details. There were other things he didn't do. But the point is this. There's so much of this stuff going on right now that some of it is a bit out of control. And there's a lot of sharks in the water. And this medicine is not something to be messed with. It's not to be taken lightly. It has to be treated with the ultimate, utmost respect. I did a radio show a while back, and one of the hosts was talking to me on the air. And he says, oh yeah, well, I made some ayahuasca and I gave it to my friends. And they went off and they did it and they had a bad experience. And I'm like, what? Are you nuts? And I had to kind of hold back. I didn't want to like spank him too much. But I said, in my opinion, you should only do it with somebody who's watching over you. It should only be done in a ceremony. It should be done with someone who really knows what they're doing, who has integrity. When I first found the people that I worked with the most, and Jared knows you worked with most of them actually, it was from somebody I knew who had been working with them for 15 years. And like I mentioned, the fact that he kept blowing me away and he wouldn't let me go in the beginning and kept trying to get rid of me, to me that was actually a good sign. Because he's been very careful. Because after all these years of working with it now, I've seen some of the strangest things you can imagine. And I went for 5 or 6 years where I was co-leading ceremonies, and sometimes I'm still co-lead now. If you don't have someone you can really trust and someone you can be safe with and vulnerable with, is going to create a safe container so you can lose your mind, which is kind of part of it. You have to sort of lose your mind to find your mind, or whatever's in there, or find yourself, or the 1,000 cells that we all are, cast of thousands, right? There are all these different things, and there's neurochemical reactions, and there's just other weird energetic woo-woo things that happen. And if you don't have somebody who knows what they're doing, you can really get in trouble. You ever hear once in a while they make a big deal out of it, somebody died in an ayahuasca session. Well, if things aren't watched close enough and people get too loose around the edges, those things happen. I've been in other circles with people. I did a lot of work starting 20 years ago with 5-MeO, which seems like it's a big deal now. And it's kind of like McDonald's, hundreds and hundreds served. In fact, at the Palenque Anthropobotany seminars, I was going around just lighting people off. But I was always very conscious, and I was holding the space, and I watched every little thing, every little eye twitch, every little breathing, everything. I totally had them energetically covered and protected. Well, some other people I was working with weren't so careful. And I didn't like they were getting too loose around the edges. And I decided I'm done with them. And I got away from them. And I almost had to get physical with them to get them away from me. I'm like, I'm done with you guys. You're not having integrity and respect. And so I got away. 2 months later, somebody died. They were doing this whole thing in a jacuzzi, and they thought it was cool. And so my instincts were right when I got away, and those are the things that can happen with almost anything. So again, this isn't something to be taken lightly. It's not something to be messed with. These are very powerful energies and forces and plants, and they're just not to be taken lightly. That's one of the things I really love about this AWARE project. Aware. This work is all about becoming more aware. And I'm always cautionary to people when I'm talking about this stuff. And I think I can consider myself an authority now after 30 years and 20 years of direct. As I like to say, I did some really good field work. And there was a period where I was studying in all these different traditions, and I did the math, and I figured it out that there was 2 or 3 year stretch there where I was doing it 30 times a year, plus other plants and other substances. I was rocking and rolling. But it's not for everybody, and anybody who knows me knows I happen to have a particular kamikaze bent. I'm like, always megadose first, and then maybe 5 years later, oh, there's such a thing as a low dose? what a revelation. Yeah, good. So this is some of the vine that's getting harvested and chopped up. Unfortunately, with all this ayahuasca tourism, they're starting to have to cultivate more, and a lot of the original stuff is really getting eaten up quickly, which bothers me for different reasons. Next. This is Enrique. This is a Shipibo family that I worked with, and I spent maybe a total of 6 weeks with them. And at the peak of it, I almost died. I got really sick and delirious, and I went to Kaiser, and they took all these tests and said, we can't find anything wrong with you. And I went to an acupuncturist. I'll never forget it as long as I live, the look on her face. That scared me more than anything. And she said that my liver was shutting down, my heart was at 20%, my lungs, and I was like totally, I was all sweaty, and I could barely dial the phone. And I've had a fair amount of acupuncture, and I gotta tell you, boy, when she put those needles in, that shit really hurt. Like poking a bruise. And as it turned out, another woman had the same thing I had, and she was a nurse. She got put into the hospital, she went into a coma, and she died. Now the unfortunate thing about how this happened is I was in the village with them, and they had like 10 different people preparing the food, and I'm sitting there, and a snot nose running kid with shitty diapers goes running by, and then 2 seconds later a pig goes running by, and then a chicken, and then a mangy dog, and it really wasn't a good environment. And the acupuncturist said I had a virus and a bacteria, and she literally saved my life. She hit me hard with some stuff, and I had to get a lot of treatments and all that. But the point is the whole thing about, oh, the jungle, and I want to go live with the Indians and all that, and it's not always what it's cracked up to be. So things got a little loose around the edges there, but I still learned a lot. Okay, next. Yeah, so he gets the vines and he shaves off the bark, and he cuts it into smaller pieces and shaves it off. You can see getting down to the bark's a little blurry. Okay, now he takes the pot like that. Those are the chacruna leaves, which is the Psychotria viridis. They contain the DMT. Now you can eat those leaves all day, straight up, and you won't get high, because the monoamine oxidase enzyme in your digestive system will digest it before it can become psychologically active, before it can pass the blood-brain barrier. So when you mix it with the ayahuasca vine, it has a beta-carbolines that act as the MAO inhibitor that allows the DMT to become orally active. Now I told you I had 10 years of experience with 5-MeO DMT, and I did a lot of NN-DMT. But for me, NN-DMT is just like a soundbite for ayahuasca, you know? Kind of like that. When you're in a good ayahuasca journey, as you guys know, we've done it, you can be 5-6 hours, and you can really be out to lunch. And it can be an ordeal, often it is. And that's often when some of the best work is being done. Okay, next. So he sits there all day with it, and he put a big banana leaf over it, and as you'll see, the leaves are layered with the cut up pieces of vine. And he sings over it, and he stays with it all day. You can see it's starting to boil down here. Right, yeah. All of that, right? You saw the big pile of leaves, and that's a big ass pot. It was about like that, and that's what you end up with, right there. So that's your ticket to other places. Next. Yeah, and then just after he took it out, that's all the stuff that's been boiled, and he set it aside. Okay, next. Yeah, and that's what the vine looks like after it's been boiled. And there I am. So that's Enrique, and that's Erlinda. She passed away a few years ago. And David over there, Mr. Suspicious looking, is their son-in-law. So they were kind of stuck with him. Yeah, that's Manuela. That's, I think she's still alive, and that's Erlinda's mom. She's a cracker. You can't see it very good, but her and Erlinda both have really black hair. And it's a Shipibo tradition, which you're seeing. Go ahead, next. Yeah, there she is. So she has a traditional Shipibo outfit. She has the dress, which is a wraparound. And you can see it has all the colors and patterns that are songs. I don't know how they do it, but I've had them sit there and just sit down and they know it's like notes or however they do it. I can't follow it, I'm a musician, but that's what they do. They're representative of songs. They could be songs to different things. Next. So that is done with Wito. And I'm not going to read it. You guys, I'll read it now. I'll read it. Wito is cultivated for stick-skinned edible fruit, which when ripe is made into drinks, jelly, and sherbet and used in ice cream. Cooking the fruit with brown sugar and aguardiente, which is a liqueur, like kind of a cheap liqueur, makes a very palatable dessert. Wito is rich in mannitol, genipain, tannins, and caffeine. The tannins give the juice an astringent effect. The juice of the immature fruit is clear, but it contains an areoid of genipain, which oxidizes to a very dark blue color, which is what you see in their hair. This juice is used to decorate clothes and pottery as well as human skin. For example, the Shipibo use crushed Wito fruits to put their traditional designs on natural cotton. You saw some of that on his kushma. Either undyed or dyed in mahogany bark, which gives the cloth a distinctive brown color. Using a pointed piece of chonta palm or an iron nail, the paint turns dark blue or black as it is opposed to air. Once skin has been dyed with Wito, the color remains for about 2 weeks. Indeed, a number of companies have begun offering Jaguar tattoo paint as an alternative to henna for a semi-permanent tattoos. Okay? That's the flower, that's the fruit. I've eaten it, it's pretty tasty. So I was doing, as part of being down there, they were giving us tattoos with the Wito. This is not me, this is one of my buddies, but I wanted to give you just a little example of what they did. Next. This was me. They knew I was a writer. So they said, give me your wrists. And they did that design for me. And they did it, we had a nice party, they did a dance for us, back and forth, a traditional dance. Again, you can see these are wraparound skirts and like pieces of cloth. And I have a ton of them. And I was lucky, my mom was a seamstress, and before she died, she came out to visit. And I asked her if she would make me a bedspread. And she ran out and ran to the sewing machine, and I got this badass bedspread of all that. So aside from the fact that it's really cool looking with all the designs, I'm sleeping under all those songs. So, it's very cool. Yeah, these are the kids. You can see they got treats because they did a really good dance. They were having a good time. That was a celebration because, like I said, I spent maybe 3 weeks with them outside of Iquitos and maybe 3 weeks, a month and a half with them in their village. And kind of became part of the family, for better or worse. Okay, next. So then we went up outside of Iquitos, and this is a Bora tribesman. We didn't drink any ayahuasca with them, but they're also an ayahuasca tribe. So they did we spent the day with them, we did dance, and they had some really cool jewelry and headdresses and stuff like that. Okay? And it was their dance. You can see here, they did a similar thing with the Wito. This is like cotton, and they do their patterns on there, which you can see they're a little different from the Shipibo patterns. Okay. I just love this picture, I'm sorry. If you guys have been on the internet, I just love this picture. They took us to a zoo, and they told me that was a jaguar, but I found out later from somebody who knew that it's actually an ocelot. But I just love that picture, so I want to put it up there. Next one. And then we were doing ceremony and staying. It was right at 2 tributaries of the Amazon, major tributaries outside of Iquitos. So we were having a blast that day, so I had to get the sunset. Yeah. So now, this is the intro to Rinquilla, this other place I go to, where I've been working with, even though they're Mestizo, to me, a much more pure tradition. When they have somebody prepare the food, it's only one person. Only one person touches the food. It's very clean. The Shipibo diet was all kinds of different things. On this dieta, you get either oatmeal or rice or quinoa boiled. A baked or boiled plantain, which is a banana which isn't ripe, which tastes just like cardboard. And maybe once or twice, maybe once a day, sometimes twice, but mostly once a day, either chicken or fish. That's it. No soap, no shampoo, no scents of any kind, no salt, no, that's it, that's all you get. And it's a cleansing diet. And in the jungle, they call ayahuasca la purga, which is the purge. And I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, it comes out both ends and every orifice in ways you can't even know. I can tell you some of those stories, but I'm not going to go there. It really clears you out. Now, typically when you start out, it's a 10-day dieta like that. And you do ayahuasca roughly every other night in a ceremony with a shaman. And you do that roughly 5 times over a 10-day period. You also drink a pitcher of a plant or plants every single day, along with this dieta. And then as you move along, they give you more plants, and then as you go further along, like me, I've been there for a long time. The last time I went to the shaman, I said, you know, I've been coming here a long time. And so what they do with the people who have more experience is you get the 5 sessions, and then you get 2 to 3 by yourself during the day, as much as you want. And so you're mostly alone, except for when you do the ceremonies. And if you get totally wigged out and freaked out and scream, they'll come. But you're mostly by yourself. So this last time I was down there, I said to the shaman, you know, I've been doing all these plants and all this stuff. And, you know, I was thinking maybe take it a little easy this year. And he looks at me and he goes, we're going to hit you hard. I was like, oh, God. Okay. Because I always do everything he says. So I got a big, big mixture of all these different plants, and I did 7 sessions over the period of time. And these particular ones were very energizing. And I think I slept 2 hours every night. That was it. And I wasn't tired. I was like, So what happens over time is that you get physically weaker. And the boundaries between your conscious and your subconscious start to really blur. And then your dreams and your visions and your waking, they all just start to blur together. And your stuff comes up. And you're mostly by yourself, so you can't blame anybody, you can't project on anybody, you gotta own it. And it's not always fun. And oftentimes there are physical expulsions related to clearing out whatever may happen to come up and all that stuff. But you also spend all that time, you're just eating the dieta and you're taking these plants, and you're also taking plant baths. So over time, you begin to smell like the jungle. So as a very quick aside, traditionally way back in time, they would do this diet, and it's why they would say you're not supposed to have sex and other things, because over time you lose your human smells and you smell like the jungle. And if you're going to go hunt a jaguar who has a keen sense of smell and relies on it, you smell like the jungle, you sort of become invisible. Not only that, but if you're in a visionary state and you can hunt the jaguar in spirit, and it's kind of an agreed upon thing, and you join your spirit with it, and you have this agreement of mutual respect. So you kind of hunt them in your visions first, this is traditionally, and then afterwards you go on the real hunt and follow up and find them, but it's like sort of a mutual agreement. And as you know in indigenous cultures, when they kill an animal, it's with the utmost respect, with the understanding that someday you're going to get lunch. So it's that kind of respect. Okay, next. So I know this, yeah, that's okay. So this guy, that frog there, when I came in the last year, he was there waiting for me, and he was a badass. So, and he was like that. So that's a big meal right there. That's boca chica and rice and plantano. That, like, if you get that, it's like Thanksgiving. And that fish has really tiny bones. So it's an exercise in patience. And if you're getting buzzed by wasps or other things, then it's really a challenge. So it takes a long time, but you savor it. Okay. So this was one of the really strong ones. Picture every day. This one was Chuchuasi, Kumaseba, Ayahuasca. Energizing and clarity and really fortification. And it hits you really hard because you're getting your body into a chemically pure state. And this dieta over the time makes you extremely alkaline. So anybody who's done any research in physiology knows that the heart of inflammation and disease and stuff is acidity. Stress and diet in modern life produces acidity. So this diet is made to make you alkaline. And you get cleared out on psychological and spiritual and all these other levels. And the more you take the abuse, the more clearer you become. And you get very centered. Okay. So this is one of my favorite places in the whole world. That's my tombo. I'm looking up from the river. I got bumped on it, put a metal roof on it because I really like to go native. But that's the last one. Yeah, you can just keep going. It's the last one at the end of the line. There's nobody on the other side of me. I defend it very strongly. It's all open air. You can see the mosquito net over there to sleep under at night. And that is my favorite spaceship. That's where we do the ceremonies. That's a Maloka. I was there the very first year they built it, and it was actually on the dirt ground before they got it raised up off the ground. And at the end of 2015, I did my 60th session there, just before I turned 60 years old, whatever that means. So I got a lot of good adventures and memories there, as well as bats that shit on you and tarantulas and stuff like that. Yeah, you can just keep going. So that's the shaman's altar. You can see there's mapachos, the Nicotina rustica that grows in the jungle there. This panpipe right here was made by Tito La Rosa, and it's all condor quills. And it's perfect. I have one. I can't play it, but I got it. It's cool. And then you see there's rattles, and you have to have a little patron saint there. These are Shipibo rattles with designs there. And this is, Agua de Florida and the Chacapa and the different things that he uses. Okay? Just taking different angles from it. That's on the way back. Now, being the last tambo at the end of the whole river, I gotta tell you, man, after getting blasted with ayahuasca and all that all night, and you're coming home like, 3 or 4 in the morning, and you're like this, and you got your head lamp on like this, and all of a sudden the monster dive bombing you and all that. It's really an adventure. So that for me is always a very welcome sight. Yeah, going up the hill, down the hill. Yeah. Home sweet home. The front veranda. It's going down to the river. The river can rise up 10 feet in an hour or two sometimes if the rain really gets going. So this is Wayusa. And the closest thing I can relate it to is eucalyptus. But it's not like that. It has its own sweet smell. And by the way, they now have it in Costco. There's Wayusa tea. And it's very good. It has some caffeine in it, and it's a very good stimulant. It's become a really, for me, a powerful ally of mine. So every morning you get that bucket, and you crush up the leaves, and you put the water in it, and then during the day, you do the plant baths. So you're getting cleansed also from the outside. And I always save a bucket, so when I come home at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm really stinking from sweating and all of whatever other bodily projections I might have on myself, first thing I do is I get there and take off all my clothes and heaven. Anyway, it's a very, very wonderful plant. This is ajo sacha that they also use, but it's called jungle garlic, and it smells just like garlic. Do you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned plant bath. What is that?
Well, you fill up the bucket with water and you crush up the leaves in it. So when you're doing this diet, what you're eating is passing things through your body very quickly. And then you're drinking the ayahuasca, and you're taking any number of combination of plants depending, and that's all going through your system. So you're getting cleansed from the inside out, and of course your toxins come out through your pores. So not only toxins and things that are physiologically coming out, but even energetically, you keep washing yourself outside. So you're inside, outside, everything's getting cleaned by a plant with a different quality. So that's that's like the Swedish you got, that's jungle cologne. And of course if it's garlic, well, everybody else is doing it too. But Wayusa is my favorite. Okay, next. Okay, that's a good grandpa ayahuasca vine there. You see he has his hand on it. Next. And those are the leaves on it. Okay, this is chacruna, so there's the ayahuasca vine, and the chacruna is a bush, and it's leafy. And so this is virotes. This is how you can tell it's chacruna. I don't know, you guys can see very well from there or not, but virote means dark. So you can see the underside, and that's one of the ways they identify it. And then another thing that really blows me away down there is there's a gazillion plants, and they all kind of all look the same, but they know which plant is which for different qualities and reasons. So that's a leaf. Yeah, there's an underside of one. This is really good. You can probably see them a little better there. Okay. And then this plant is amazing. They'll take that leaf and they'll cut it in half, and they'll just put it in the ground, and whoosh, roots come out, and boom. So they're very prolific like that. Okay, next. And that's a little plot they're starting to farm there. Okay, so this is Ojé. It's a white latex resin that's used as an anti-parasitic. They'll mix it up sometimes with just a few drops in water, and it helps to get rid of parasites and things of that nature. This is one of my favorite plants of all. This is sangre de grado, dragon's blood. Now, it should be, in Spanish, it should be sangre de grado, I can't even do it now. Sangre de drago.
Dragon.
Yeah, dragon's blood. But the Indians mixed it up and they started calling it sangre de grado. And so that's like the jungle name for it. This is an awesome plant. You can see that it's got chops on it because if you go up and you hit it with a machete, it literally bleeds red. And you take that, and it's latex and it's an antibacterial. So if you have a cut, you just put it on there and it dries into an instant Band-Aid. It's also used mix it with water, and it's used for ulcers. If women happen to be having really bad menstrual problems or something like that, hemorrhaging, extra bleeding, they use it for that. It's really good. And I've had cut a few pretty good cuts, and I feel like I'm Jungle Boy going up there, oh yeah, I'm going to heal myself, and cut it, put it on there. It's really good stuff. I found out from a friend that, yeah, that's just going up like that. I found out from a friend that something like 70% of what they sell on the market is not the real thing. But that's the real deal. So that's just the tree going on. Okay, this is another special tree, it's tawari. And the bark is used as an anti-inflammatory, an anti-tumor treatment, and a sexual stimulant. There's lots of that kind of stuff down there. And there's a whole song around this tree because it sustains a lot of different life and it's very much revered. So there's a whole song behind all that tree that celebrates it. And it obviously goes up. Okay, so you guys probably heard of this one, uña de gato, cat's claw. And you use the bark, it's anti-inflammatory, tumors, cancer treatment, arthritis, rheumatism, and immune system booster. It's a really powerful plant. You can buy it in a lot of health food stores and things, they cap it and all that stuff. They do their own thing with it. I've worked with it a couple of times. And then you see just the way it takes off and picks on another tree. So this is a big red lupuna. They say if you boil the bark to from this tea, you can jump to a new level of shamanic training after years of training. So it's another big one. And the lupunas are always considered strength. Okay. This one, Wikungo palm, Supaikasha, thorn of the devil. This thing even looks like a badass. It has all these spikes, and they say that if you take that and you decide to go into black magic, there's no turning back. And I found it interesting. You just look at that thing and you're like, you don't even want to get near it. It's all those spines are like, get away from me. And I realized, studying it for a little bit, nothing else grows around it. It's like even the other plants are like, get out of here, man, I don't want to be around you. So it's a pretty bad one. Another little close up. This is katawa they use for poisonous snakebite remedy. This one's one of the more popular, widely used one, chuchuwasi. I've worked with it a bunch of times. Sexual stimulant, anti-inflammatory, treatment for arthritis and rheumatism. Shamanically, it gives you a lot of energy, internal strength, and courage. It's a real fortifier. And a lot of the old guys down there, they drink it in a little shot. It's supposed to keep Mr. Johnson really happy. It's kind of a well-known joke about widely carried tradition. Next. Yeah, let's just stick going on. That's one of my favorite herb ladies. This is all tobacco. And this tobacco, by the way, used in mapachos and ceremony and other ways. As I mentioned, it's Nicotino rustica. It has 5 to 7 times the nicotine of the crap they sell up here. And when I was younger, when I finally quit smoking, I was smoking 2.5 packs of Marlboros a day. And I stopped, and I was out for years and years and years. And then I took a few hits of that, and I inhaled it, and I got hooked on the head rush. And I started getting hooked again. I thought, whoa, I better back off on that. And what I discovered through the shamanic teachers that I had is that they say it's such a powerful ally that you have to respect it. And that whole addictive thing is sort of part of its power, and that boundary you really should walk. So I only use it in ceremony now, and I don't inhale it anymore. I give it the respect that it deserves. Okay. Can't see this very well, but this is one of the plant menus, and it talks about the different plants and the qualities that they have and what you can do with it. Okay, next. There, that's that. Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, all this work is shadow work, primarily, especially now with us Westerners going down there and working with it. And it brings up all of the stuff that's inside of you, whether you like it or not. And it has a way of finding your deepest fears and kind of rubbing your face in it. So it's always an ordeal. Growth, generally speaking, growth is never really fun. The results can be great as time passes, but you can't, it's not, I've had girlfriends, oh, I want to go to the jungle, and I start to tell them about what's happening. They're like, oh, maybe I don't, you know, because it's just not a fun thing. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really learned a lot from it. It's changed my life in radical ways. In the archetypal world, it's considered to be the dark feminine.
When you say it, are you talking about either? Or
Yeah.
I mean, of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
specialized in the ceremonies,
Yeah.
not the other teacher plants.
No, they all have different things. Ayahuasca is considered to be the mother of all the other plants.
Okay, so you're speaking about either.
Yeah, the whole, you know, one of the things that fascinated me about ayahuasca and shamanism and DMT initially is the agreed upon psychological landscape. The crystal castles, which I've visited many times. The fact that you can be in the jungle and you can be in New York City, no matter where you are, you're still going to see snakes and jaguars, and you're going to have those particular animals that are associated with it. So I have this whole thing, right now, I'm writing a nonfiction book about perception and altered states and shamanism and all those things. And when you get into that state, when you're in an ayahuasca circle, you're all drinking. So the analogy I love to use is you're all tuning into the same radio station. If everybody here had a radio, we all had our own radios, we all tuned to the same station. Even though we have all these different radios, we'd all be hearing the same thing. So when you get into the ayahuasca state, you get into that vibe. And you can have sometimes telepathic experiences. And you have, so it's an individual journey done in a group setting. So you have your individual journey, and then you have sort of the whole energy of the group to support you in that. And when the shaman is doing his job, he's like riding herd on the orchestra and keeping the energy and knowing that maybe an energy leaks over here, or maybe this person's having a problem. Funny things happen, like one person will purge for the whole group and all these other really wonderfully strange things. It's also very, very unpredictable, which is one of the things I've always loved about it. Because you never know. And it does have a cumulative effect. So some people have a great experience on it and suddenly they're enlightened and the whole world changes and all these things. And then 2 weeks later they're in their regular daily life and they go slip right back into what they were doing before. They forget. So if you learn it, you need to learn to also walk the walk. Because otherwise you're kind of wasting your time. It's just not something you mess with. Yes?
That's exactly what I wanted to ask. So if people do this to do the shadow work, is there support or like the psychological, you know, integration?
Yes. Good question. Very good question. Thank you. So in the prehistoric days, no, because they were all living together and they were really a cohesive unit. But in all the sessions that I've worked in, there's always an integration session. So typically we'll do it at night, and although I've done a few daytime sessions, but we'll do it at night, and then the session may end about 3 or 4 in the morning. Everybody goes to bed, gets a little bit of sleep if they can. Then we get up and we have a big potluck breakfast, and then we all meet, and we go around the circle. And everybody integrates. And whoever's running the show is there to help interpret things or figure out what's happening or help them to have a good understanding of what their experience was. And many, many, many times, somebody else's experience helps another person with something they were struggling with. Or, you know, one amazing thing happened last time among a lot of amazing things, which is why I've continued to work with it. The guy I was with was singing a song about Palo Santo. Does anybody know what Palo Santo is? I know some of you guys do. Yeah. Okay, so Palo Santo means holy wood. And it's a really sweet smelling, and you can burn it, and it's good. It's similar to sage. It's a cleanser and kind of protector thing. A little more on the gentler side as opposed to tobacco, which is really strong. Anyway, you're singing this song, the Palo Santo. Because when you sing the Icaros, you're singing to the plants, you're singing to the spirits of the forest, and you're honoring them, and you're flattering them, because the mother's feminine. So you're like, hey baby, you're beautiful, and I'm singing this just for you, and maybe you can help me out, help a brother out. But you sing, you honor them. So anyway, he was singing this song, the Palo Santo, and I started smelling it. And I wasn't smelling it burning, I was smelling it fresh. And like nobody had any there. And right with the song he was singing, and he sung it, I'm sitting back and I'm going, wow, that really blew my mind. And then this girl from across the room said, is anybody else smelling Palo Santo while he was playing that song? And I was like, whoa. So those are some of the things that can happen. The essence of shamanism, among other things, is that shamanism is all about energy. Absolutely everything is energy. So when you go into a circle and you drink, you're creating a particular energy within yourself. There's this whole thing about, in fact, I call the opening chapter of my memoir, A Waking Dream. Because we go through our lives with our left brains primarily active. More so, generally speaking, for males. Females are more in touch with their right side and their intuition and their hearts and their feminine. Guys are generally more, and we generally function in the world with our left brain, and the right brain kind of gets shut out. Again, more so with males, generally speaking. Because I got a lot of gay bros, and they can run all of it. But, so generally speaking, your left brain is kind of running the show. When you go to sleep at night, your left brain gets a rest, and your right brain comes out to play. And that's what dreaming is. Dreaming is the language of the right brain, and it's not linear, rational, logical, boom. It's visual, it's conceptual, it's emotional, it's a whole other kind of language. And that's why you can be in a dreaming state and be doing the weirdest things like flying over the buildings, and you're accepting of it, because you're in that mode of consciousness. So what happens when you drink ayahuasca is that the right brain gets woken up, but the left brain hasn't gone to sleep. And that's when the fun begins. And what I always tell people is when you're in those states, that sometimes things happen so quickly. Don't try to figure it out. Let it rip. Ride the wave. Dance. Because that's what integration is all about. And the people who I've always seen to the man who have had the biggest problems and the most traumatic problems are the heavy-duty intellectuals. People who are what they call intellectually centered. I have a good friend who's a PhD, and he came down to the jungle. Wouldn't go unless I was there. Real brainiac. And he spent the first 3 sessions curled up in my lap. Just because he was used to solving everything with his rational brain. And I'm here to tell you, your rational brain don't work in this situation. So if you're sitting there and you're trying to figure it out, you're looking for trouble because it just doesn't work. So you really got to ride with it, and then there's time later to figure it out. And when you work with it over longer periods of time, you have different levels of integration. Like if I never drank any ever again, I'm still integrating from all the years that I did it. And something all of a sudden from what happened to me 8 years ago, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what that was. Or something from 12 years ago ties in with something from 6 years before that, and then I get this other revelation, and those bigger levels of integration always go on. I like to say I'm in a constant state of integration. And I always like to say I'm also permanently altered. I'm tripping all the time. I don't need anything else. When I take it now, it's because I help people or I facilitate and I go on the journey with them. But I really don't have a need anymore for myself personally. Like my buddy Lorenzo, who was kind of introduced me when he got sick. He always says, and he quoted from somebody, in terms of doing a lot of psychedelics, you got the message. You can hang up the phone now. And I'm not easily impressed. But I can honestly say that It's changed my life. It made a big difference for me. It's opened me up in ways I could never have imagined. How are we doing for time?
Ready for questions?
Yeah, it wasn't Q&A, guys. I got a lot of experience. Pick my brain. Yes, sir.
I was curious, if you come upon like an aha moment in a session, being a writer, do you actually transcribe, just change the names a little bit and put that experience onto somebody else? Is that how you use some of your aha moments in the session?
No. Good question. From a creative standpoint, I'm a writer. I'm always writing. And when I'm not writing, I'm editing somebody else's book, or, I'm an author, editor, teacher. So when I go to the jungle, I don't want to write. So I went my first year with a cassette. And that first year, well, I have sort of a little ritual where I get back to my tambo after the session, take off all my clothes. I spend more of the time naked in the jungle anyway. I love it. Take my plant bath, and then I get on my recorder when it's still fresh in my mind. And I speak into the recorder and record my experience. So when I went the first time and I was being sort of Mr. Anthropologist and all this other stuff, I filled up like a dozen cassettes on both sides. Oh, I farted. Okay, say that. Oh, the wind blew a leaf across my way. Oh, maybe it's magic. All this crazy stuff. And then like the next year, maybe I had 8 tapes, and the next year there were 4, and then 2, and then after a while I'm like, I'm done. It's all going on up here. But I'm glad I did that, because the end of my memoir there ends with my first time in the jungle, because I had a very profound experience then. And so I was writing it, and I had it down pretty good, but then when I listened to myself in there on the tape, when I was, going through it, it really enhanced things. So I do it that way. But when I go down there, I just want to submit myself to the experience and let it take me. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Question about, you said the 5 doses in 10 days. I've heard before that hallucinogens at normal doses don't work more than once a week. Or if you're taking a dose, you have to double the dose in order to feel an effect. But I mean, if you're taking let's say a medium to strong dose, you can't take it next day. Your brain just doesn't function.
That's true with LSD.
Okay.
But not with ayahuasca. And not with other things. LSD has a very built-in tolerance. Like, you can take a good dose. If you take the very same dose the next day, you probably won't feel anything. You're correct. It's like exponential. The more you do it, the more it's going to take.
Or this was for psilocin. This was in a mushroom class that I took in a university. So I mean, this was coming from a professor who had studied it and saying,
Psilocybe's possible, because I never did it. Yeah, but I'm here to tell you.
Psilocybin does have that similar tolerance, but they actually have done tolerance studies with DMT specifically, and there doesn't seem to be any buildup of tolerance. I think Rick Strassman did that research in the 90s. So that's probably why ayahuasca doesn't seem to.
It doesn't. I've taken dose after dose. I even at one point I went up for like a 4th dose, so they both, Ronnie and Ken there, both at the same time went, no. Okay.
So the dosage you don't develop a tolerance?
No. Another funny thing happens. As you go through the dieta and your body gets clearer and clearer and more, for lack of better words, more chemically pure, it can affect you in a lot different and profound ways. So sometimes I've taken like 2 and 3 doses and not much happened. And then other times I just take a little dose to get my brains totally blown out. You don't know. You don't know. Everybody's physiologically different. Everybody's neurochemically different. Then when you're doing the dieta down there, and even with the particular plants, like I've worked with some of the other plants that were also visionary, which were some of the better experiences. Another interesting thing that happens for those of you who have been experimenting is after I did a lot of work with ayahuasca, and then I took mushrooms, I could go right into ayahuasca space.
Yep.
And like I hadn't really known it was there before because it didn't come up in the mushrooms, but once I went out into those places with the ayahuasca, I could drink that and go right there.
You mean without taking ayahuasca?
By take mushrooms and have an ayahuasca experience. Not quite the same gastronomically, And then opened my doors, and it gave me, I've also had some really tremendously profound shroom experiences. I won't get into the details, but at one point when I was really going for it, I ate 13 Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds with chocolate and honey and 9 grams of shrooms, and literally almost killed myself.
The Hawaiian would have done it, should have done it in and of itself.
Oh, it's been an ally of mine. It was my first real opening. I had done tons of acid, and then I got turned on to the Hawaiians, and I had a really wonderfully profound experience. It was like 40 years ago now, where I suddenly saw things that I'd never seen before. And it changed. I went from being a violent, street-fighting, criminal-type, juvenile delinquent who wouldn't grow up, fool. I'm still that now, deep down inside. But I went from that to I became a vegetarian. I stopped everything. I spent 13 years totally baseline. I wouldn't even take an aspirin if I had a headache, no coke, nothing, no caffeine, nothing. And then I read Terence McKenna's Food of the Gods. And it was the first time I thought, wow, there could be spirituality tied in with tripping. Really? Wow. And I went out and I spent all the money, I spent $1,000, and I bought all the stuff, and I failed twice, but I was growing my own shrooms, and I finally grew them. And I started having some really awesome trips from a spiritual perspective, as opposed to, hey, let's get fucked up tonight, right? And it changed everything. And then I got down to meet Terence and all the rest of it. I got in the Ethiopia seminars, and I started to see the two. And it's all been tied in with my writing, because it's all ties into the same things. It's all about transformation. She had mentioned just briefly, this to me is a wonderful cosmic thing, I think. There was a whole big deal running up to 2012. And the Land Without Evil show was all about shamanic transformation. And as it turned out, it was December 8th through 16th, 2012 in Austin, Texas. We did 8 shows, and every show was like a ceremony. And most of the people I talked to that attended the show said they had a transformative experience being in the show, and the timing of it and all that. And none of that was planned, it just turned out that way. But they say that ayahuasca has a tendency to find you. So she's on the lookout. And, as another little aside, there was a guy some years ago, I heard him talk, and he was saying that he was like a Christian kind of person, but he was thinking really hard about doing ayahuasca. And he was really kind of torn up about it, trying to figure it out. He wanted to do the right thing, but he was just felt drawn toward it. And so he decided to go to church to find an answer. So he went to this church, and the minister in the church started talking about ayahuasca. And he said, then I knew that was my answer, right? Those kind of funny things happen. So in indigenous cultures, dreaming and visions and waking life, consensual reality, what we're all sharing right now, for them, they all carry the same weight. They're all just as equal, just as valid. And when you do this work a lot, your dreams and your visions start to come, and then it starts to sort of come into your waking life, and your waking life tends to become more dreamlike. And that's when the magic really starts to happen. It really changes things, because in the end, it's all about perspective. Shamans are masters of perspective, they're masters of altered states. So if you're stuck in this life like many people are today, with they're to the right or they're to the left, or they want to tear down a statue, or they don't, whatever, they're all this divided stuff. They're all trapped in narrow perspectives. So with altered states, especially ayahuasca, but with other things, if you're tuned into this place on the dial, and then you take something and you get off the dial for 4 to 6 hours, whatever, boom, you come back. You take something else and you go here. Take something else, you go there, and you keep jacking with the tuning on the dial. At some point, you break that lock. And that flexibility of perspective and perception that you gain through those experiences, learning to navigate them, come into your everyday life. And you can go through everyday life experiences that are very surreal to anybody, whether they do things or not. And you're more well-equipped to deal with it because you've been down the road of things. You can't change necessarily what's going on in the world around you, but you have total control over how you interpret it and what you do with it. You can't change what externally affects you, but you can change how you react or not react. You can choose to react, or you can act. You can observe. And if you're observing, you're paying attention, then you're developing higher awareness. Just like what the Aware Project is doing, incidentally, in other words. But you develop a higher level of awareness, and when you're more aware, you're more present. And when you're more present, you're going to see things that you might not have seen before, because you're more centered in your whole perception of reality. You know, what happens in the middle of a hurricane in the eye of the storm? Nothing. In shamanism, that's a place of power. So if you have all these multiple thousand eyes, multiple personalities that we all have, and they're all competing for attention, and they're all scattered, and one of my teachers called it energy leaks, and you start to integrate those traumatic little sub-personalities that you have created, and you start bringing them back more and more and more to a central spot, or as I like to say, daddy's home, or mom's home, right? And start owning and taking responsibility for those things, and you start to bring in those diverse aspects of yourself, and you become more integrated, and you become what in Jungian terms is individuation. In shamanic terms, you become a man or a woman of power, because you're discovering the energy leaks and all of these sub-personalities and all these traumas that you have created for whatever reasons. You go and you find them, and boy, most of them are pissed off because they've been abandoned and ignored. It's all the stuff you don't want to see in yourself. It's what you project onto other people so you don't have to see it in yourself. And it's all a defensive mechanism. But if you continue to do the work and you go through what you need to go through, and then you start to realize that you did create them. So instead of the inmates running the asylum, you turn it back around and you take responsibility and you start running the show. And you start kind of calling all the babies home, so to speak. And you become more aware and more present in each moment, and you have a more balanced reaction to everything. One more example in terms of power. If you think of a pendulum, and you think of, like, say, in this day and age, all these extremes, right and left and all that crap. You look at a pendulum. When you swing a pendulum to one end, when it reaches the peak of that extreme, it gets to a point where it has no power anymore. None, zero, zilch. And it starts to turn direction. And when it swings back towards the center, right at the center is where the maximum power is. And then when it swings the other way, it goes through the same thing. So the center is where it's at. That's where power is. The center is the place that has the calm. The center is the place you try to strive for when you're meditating, or you're doing some other practice. By the way, ayahuasca has been my path, but it's not for everybody. And a lot of people don't need it. And there are other methods that I've used. I worked with a personal coach for 5 or 6 years. And everybody else she worked with who was doing ayahuasca, she told them, stop doing it. It's not helping you. But she kept telling me, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. So it took me 3 or 4 years to integrate what she was teaching me and showing me. And what I was learning from the ayahuasca. And I finally got and figured out, and I finally understood the process. The whole thing about the shadow. You know, it's what I mentioned, it's what I teach in my writing. The bad guy in every story, the antagonist, is really the shadow of the hero and the protagonist. And every character in the story represents like a planet. So the sun is the center of this solar system. In shamanism, that sun is connected to the bigger sun, to the bigger sun, the bigger sun, all the way back to source. And aside from being an ancient shamanic tradition, there's the Temple of Man in Luxor, Egypt. Have you guys anybody ever heard of it?
Yes.
The Temple of Anthropocosmic Man. And they say it's a map of the human body, which is also a map of the cosmos. It's holographic. They don't use that word, but it's holographic. And this genius by the name of Schwaller de Lubitz, a Frenchman, spent 15 years analyzing the temple. And it's an exact, precise, mathematical map of the human body. And in that belief system, the heart is the center. So the heart is the center of your universe, to the one in our solar system, to the one all the way back to source. And ayahuasca is about opening the heart and getting the mind out of the way. and opening the heart and becoming more heart-centered, which is also considered to be essence-centered as opposed to ego-centered or personality-centered. You become more higher directed because you're communicating with your heart, and you start having telepathic experiences. And there's a lot of speculation of why didn't the Egyptians have a better written language instead of the hieroglyphics. And the speculation is that they were heart-centered. And so they had kind of a lot of telepathy, and everybody kind of knew it was like a lot of truth, so nobody could get away with stuff, because everybody kind of knew what everybody else was doing. So I always kind of liked that idea. So I sort of ascribed to it. Again, it's speculation. I wasn't there, so I can't really tell you about it.
Any other questions?
Yes. Go ahead.
You first, then you.
Okay, cool. So, who were you spiritually before the ayahuasca experience, and who are you afterwards spiritually?
Well, I'm a work in progress. I'll tell you another little story. I was completely out of touch with my feminine side. I'm the original tough guy. I was a street fighter, I studied martial arts, I grew up with a lot of violence. So I had no feminine side. I went for 30 years without crying. And it wasn't like I'm not gonna cry, there's just nothing there. And when I started working with the ayahuasca, I broke through to that. And I went through 2 or 3 years where you could say one thing, or see something, and I just start bawling. So my mother, when she was alive, she called me one time, my birthday. And she called me, she goes, "Happy birthday, honey." And it was so sweet. I just started blubbering. And I'm like, she's like, "You okay, honey?" And I'm like, and then she goes, "Does this have anything to do with those plants you were working on?" And she says, "Just have a good cry, honey, and you'll be okay." You know, and it took me about 5 minutes to come back, and I did. And that went on for a couple of years. And the funny thing was, once I reconnected with that part of myself, my intuition went like this. So I love to say, and it's on my webpage, I'm an author, editor, shamanic explorer. That's what I am. I've tied it all in with creativity and all that. A lot of my mentors are now passing away. I'm going to be 62 in a couple of months, so I'm easing into my elderhood. At the Writers' Conference, Ray Bradbury, if anybody ever heard of Ray Bradbury, he was one of my mentors. And I'm like kind of carrying the torch for him. I'm stepping into his place now at the Writers' Conference in the writing community because that's who I learned from, and he's gone. So I'm carrying that. That's why a lot of this stuff is important to me, to bring forth the traditions. When I wrote Land Without Evil, I did a lot of work with the oral traditions of the Guarani Indians because I wanted to preserve it. So I'm an explorer, I'm a spiritual friend for people, I'm an advisor, I'm a mentor. I am not a shaman. I will not call myself a shaman. And I have problems with anybody who does. And I'm serious about being a work in progress because it never ends. You get to one level, and then there's a whole new set of problems, or puzzles, or however you want to call them. And you work through those, and it's just infinite. It never ends. So I don't like to put myself out as being enlightened. I like to put myself out as somebody with a lot of experience. I've been teaching the writing for like 25 years now. So I'm really well known in there. And you can call me a mentor and a writing guru in that arena. That's all okay. And I can advise people. And part of being a writing workshop leader is being a psychologist and a psychiatrist, frankly. And you have to wrangle egos and help people and, be supportive in that way. And also doing the ayahuasca work and the people that I've worked with, you have to be in a position where people can be vulnerable with you without being worried about being taken advantage of. Is that helpful? Good answer for you?
So we're kind of out of time for questions, but I encourage you to talk with him afterwards if you still have a question for him.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Yeah. thank you, Mateo. Great talk. So yeah, thank you all for coming. It was a small, intimate group, but that's just fine for community building. So a couple of things. First, I want to thank the volunteers, Savari, Nick, and Jake. We wouldn't be able to do this without volunteers. And if you are interested in volunteering for an Aware Project event, we could always use the help. And eventually I'll probably be passing the torch to somebody. So if somebody is really interested in taking over the Aware Project for San Diego, then I encourage you to come connect with me. And also, these events really are about community building. And so I really encourage you guys to hang out for a few extra minutes and introduce yourself to someone new that you don't know, and just, continue the dialogue and the integration and the sharing of experiences and information with each other about these medicinal, psychedelic compounds that we're all here because we appreciate them in some way. And again, September 7th is our next event on the true entourage effect, looking at ketosis and the endocannabinoid system and manipulating it with cannabinoid compounds from marijuana or cannabis. All right? Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.